All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is the Heritage Richmond Hill meeting. Councillor Sullivan has her video off as she's having some issues with her connection, but she is joining us by telephone and she will be chairing the meeting. So, Councillor Sullivan, I pass it over to you to do the public statement and then the call to order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Good afternoon, everybody. My apologies for the late start, but I'm having connection problems. So let us begin today's meeting. Welcome, everyone, to the March 6th Heritage Richmond Hill meeting. This afternoon's meeting is an electronic meeting being held pursuant to Section 238(3.3) of the Municipal Act 2001. We have not received any regrets from committee members. The public had the opportunity to submit written correspondence regarding agenda items by email to the clerk's office. All written correspondence received by 12 p.m. noon yesterday would have been included on the agenda, but none were received. The public also had the opportunity to apply to appear as an electronic delegation, either by video conference or by telephone by 12 p.m. noon yesterday, but there were also none received. As chair of the committee, I will now call the meeting to order and ask for a member of committee to please forward a motion to adopt the agenda. Ryan, you my eyes.
Thank you. Committee member DeMembro has moved the motion.
Thank you. All those in favor, my hand is risen.
That looks like it is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Ryan, the next agenda item is?
Will be disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof.
Thank you. Does any committee member have any disclosures? Seeing none?
Seeing none, correct.
Okay, seeing none, thank you. Our next agenda item, Ryan?
So the next agenda item, 4.1, is the minutes of the Heritage Richmond Hill meeting HRH 0125 that was held on February 6, 2025. That those minutes be adopted.
Thank you. Could I have a member of committee bring this item forward, please? Raise your hand.
That forward.
I see Councillor Davidson has moved the motion.
Councillor Davidson, thank you so much. I gather everyone has read their minutes. Are there any comments? Seeing none?
Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, so there are no comments here. So all those in favor? Hand risen.
Councillor Sullivan, I see that motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. I would imagine the next agenda item is our main item.
Correct. So there are no delegations. So the next agenda item is 6.1. That would be SRPBS 25027, which is a notice of intention to designate 297 Richmond Street, City File D12-07379.
Thank you. Okay, so could I have a member of committee to bring this matter forward, please, so we can have it on the floor for discussion?
Councillor Sullivan, I see committee member Parr has moved the motion.
Thank you, Agnes. Appreciate it. Okay, so you moved the motion. You have the floor. Is there anything you wish to say?
Committee member Parr, we're not actually able to hear you for some reason.
I think there's something big wrong with the system.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so yeah, committee member Parr, I don't know if your microphone, I mean, it looks like you're unmuted, so that looks good, but we certainly can't hear you. I don't know if you want to try to, maybe you should try to leave the meeting and then rejoin. That may, sometimes that helps, certainly helped me earlier today. So,
yeah. Is Agnes doing that?
Yes, she's just left the meeting and anticipate she would come back in. Did you want to move, or sorry, probably give
Well,
her a
we've
minute.
got the motion on the floor, right?
Yes, we do have the motion on the floor, correct.
Okay, so let's wait for Agnes to come back. In the meantime, are there any committee members who wish to comment on the motion on the floor? Just raise your hand and Ryan will bring you in.
Councillor Silivets, there are no other committee members that have requested to speak.
Okay. Thank you, me neither. So is Agnes back with us?
Through the chair, no, she is not, has not yet rejoined.
Okay,
Sorry, she is just rejoined. She's
Okay.
connected to audio and so committee member Parr, do you want to try to say something? Maybe it works now. It doesn't look like it works. We can certainly see you, but we cannot hear you.
Okay, Agnes, can you hear us?
Looks like she can hear us. It looks like she can hear us.
She can. So Agnes, if you have any questions, it's very difficult to do anything here because we can't hear you. So could you just indicate, please, by a nod or a shake that you don't have any questions or comments?
I'm not sure if that is a nod or a shake of whether she has comments or not. She's nodding yes, so I think that means she probably does have comments. That's my guess.
She does. Okay, so Mr. Deputy Clerk, Ryan, what do we do in a situation like this? Because she moved the motion, but I can't get a response from her.
Yeah, so committee member Parr, did you want to email us your comments and I can read them for you? I think that's probably the best scenario in this situation. Alternatively, you could certainly call in by phone, and I can send you that. But I think maybe the easiest thing right now would be to email any comments you would happen to have. That's possible for you. But through the chair, it looks like she is gonna type something for us. That's what it looks like.
Okay.
So
Okay. So again, everyone, just hang here. Let's get this done. This is 21st century problems.
oh, she has logged out.
Okay.
I'm gonna send her an email. Perhaps she can join by telephone the same way.
Okay.
Bear with me for a second. Oh no, she's joined back in again.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, members of committee, staff, and anyone who's following this one online.
Committee member Parr, we still can't hear you for some reason. Councillor Davidson has raised her hand.
Hey,
Okay.
can I move the motion and we can move forward and maybe we can figure out the audio as we go?
Not a bad idea. One moment. Ryan, what do you think? What should we do here?
Yeah, so I mean, Committee Member Parr has moved the motion, so I don't think there's an issue with the moving of the motion.
Okay.
I think it's just whether to get her comments on the record, I would say, would be the issue at hand.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get too many things done at the same time to get her an email. So bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to see if I can get one of the staff to send her an email because to look it up and all that. So
Otherwise, Ryan, you can send her my cell phone number and she can text me.
I still have to get her phone number, so bear with me for while I get that going. Carly, I don't know if you're able to find her email address and phone number real quick, and then see if we can go that way. bear with me for 1 second. I need to switch screens. 1 second.
Of course, thank you.
So, Councillor Silovitz, if you have Agnes's phone number, could you not conference her in on your phone? Because you're on phone right now.
Yeah, I can try that. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Let me just see. I don't think I do, but I'll double check. Hang on. No, I only have her email.
Karen, it's Carol.
Carol, hi.
Hi, is it possible, could we move to 6.2 withdrawal of the notice of intention to designate, talk about that? Because I could move that and I'm happy to talk about that, or is that not possible? Like move to the next item.
Yeah.
Let's find out from.
Sorry, yeah, through the chair. Yeah, we can do that, and hopefully we can resolve committee member Parr's connection issue. So the next item would be 6.2, withdrawal of the notice of intention to designate 12345 Yonge Street, and it's a presentation by Julia Smith.
Thank you very much, Julia. I can't see, but if you can be expressive enough, I'll know what you're showing.
Do we need to move anything there? No, I'll mute again.
Not yet.
Okay.
No, not yet. Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Let's hope. I'm hoping everyone can hear me. There seems to be some technical difficulties happening, but okay, great. So good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. And I actually just noticed as I was looking through the list of committee members, I think that we have some new committee members in our midst. So I'll introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. My name is Julia Smith, and I'm one of the heritage planners here at Richmond Hill. And my main focus of work here really is property research and evaluation. So I'm here today to give an update and answer any questions that the committee may have on the withdrawal of notice of intention to designate 12345 Yonge Street, which was approved by council based on staff's recommendation at the council meeting on February 12th, 2025. Next slide, please. So just as a brief overview of the structure of my presentation today, I'll first be giving a summary of the issue background, including details about the withdrawal, the process, and also relevant parts of the Ontario Heritage Act, because we all know at this point it can get quite confusing. Then I'll be summarizing and answering some questions that Council asked staff before they withdrew the notice of intention to designate on February 12th. I'll then be reviewing next steps for this property, and then we'll open up the floor in case any committee members have any questions about the notice of intention to designate withdrawal or the processes. Next slide, please. So just to remind the committee about the property in question, this is a recent photograph of what we were referring to as the Ryan Paxton House at 12345 Yonge Street. It's located on the east side of Yonge Street between Stouffville Road and Bond Lake, so in the Oak Ridges area. Next slide, please. So to review the background for this property, staff did research and evaluate 12345 Yonge using available research sources as well as a site visit to the house, which in the case of this property, the house is unfortunately quite far set back from the road. It's around 140 feet of a setback. And so based on this research and observation, the house was found to meet 3 out of 9 Regulation 906 criteria. And so staff did recommend it for designation at the time. So as a result, an independent heritage evaluation for the property, which they did fairly recently submit to us. And just a couple of reminders about the objection process under the Ontario Heritage Act. So whenever we receive an objection, council has to make a decision to either affirm or withdraw the notice of intention to designate within 90 days. So in this case, that was March 4th, 2025. And because of this tight timeline, the Act does not require consultation with the Heritage Committee on objections, unfortunately. And another thing I should point out is that, again, unfortunately, if Council does decide to withdraw a NOID, then the property does get automatically removed from the register, again, without consultation with the Heritage Committee. And I should also point out that this kind of automatic removal following withdrawal of a notice of intention to designate was a very recent change to the Act that happened as a result of Bill 23. Next slide, please. So as a standard protocol, whenever we receive an objection, staff reviewed the objection in detail, and we also took another look at our own research and evaluation of the property. And what we determined was that since there were fairly limited archival sources available to staff when we were doing our research of the property, and since the owners were willing to hire their own heritage consultant to provide additional information, that this objection did have some merit. And another thing I should mention here is that our approach to property evaluation is evolving in light of the unprecedented number of heritage appeals that are coming forward throughout Ontario because of Bill 23. So as a result of all these appeals, the interpretation and application of Regulation 906 criteria are now being legally tested through the Ontario Land Tribunal, or the OLT. And OLT decisions are becoming case law that helps guide how we evaluate properties moving forward. So based on this evolving interpretation of our evaluation criteria and the fact that we think it would be beneficial to review the heritage evaluation report that was submitted by the owner's heritage consultant, we recommended that Council withdraw the notice of intention to designate, as we felt that passing a bylaw at that point for this property would have been premature. And based on this recommendation, Council did end up withdrawing the notice of intention to designate on February 12th, as I mentioned before. And they did also request that we report back to the committee to provide an update on the withdrawal, because there's no formal mechanism for consultation with the committee when an objection comes forward. And just to reiterate the point I made before, because of Bill 23, once a notice of intention to designate is withdrawn by Council, the property in question is unfortunately removed from the register. Next slide, please. So we wanted to just review some of the questions that were posed to staff by members of Council when the withdrawal came forward on February 12th, because we think that reviewing those may provide some valuable context and information to the committee as well. So there was a question as to whether staff believe the owner is acting in good faith with their objection. And yes, we have had multiple conversations with the owner and their lawyer. And they have hired their own reputable heritage consultant who produced what looks to be a very thorough heritage evaluation report of the property. So we do believe that the owner is acting in good faith with this request for withdrawal. There was also a question about whether withdrawing the notice of intention to designate at this point will prevent us from designating the property in the future. So while the property has now been removed from the register automatically per this new section of the Act that came in as a result of Bill 23, so we're not able to relist the property for a period of 5 years, but we are able to designate it de novo, or we could bring a new designation forward in the future if we thought that it merited such protection. And I should mention that there is one caveat to this, however, and this kind of is just, represents how complex the Act can get sometimes. But we wouldn't be able to designate this property if certain types of development applications were to come in for the property. But we are confident, based on our conversations with the property owner and their lawyer, that one of these types of applications is not going to happen in the near future for this property. Next slide, please. So there was also a question from Council about why we don't proceed with the designation and then repeal the bylaw if we need to in the future. And so I think it's important to point out that if we had proceeded with the designation, the bylaw doesn't actually kind of automatically come into force right away because there is a statutory appeal period for designation bylaws under the Ontario Heritage Act. And there is a very high chance in this instance that we would receive an appeal because we have already received an objection and because there is a lawyer and a law firm involved. So unfortunately, it's not really as simple as just passing a bylaw and then repealing it. There is this built-in appeal process that kind of complicates things for us. And that takes me to the next question, discretion from council, which is why we don't proceed with the designation and let it go through the appeal process. So as I mentioned earlier, as more and more case law comes out on designations, the evidence about how 906 criteria should be interpreted and applied is being more firmly established. And based on our evolving understanding of the evaluation criteria, which is recently tied to case law, we believe that the withdrawal of the notice of intention to designate to allow a sober second thought was appropriate in this case. And I think it's important to mention that the objection process is designed for this very purpose, to allow an owner to object with evidenced claims and to allow staff to reconsider the recommendations to council. And since appeals take up a huge amount of city resources across different departments, and I happen to be working on an appeal for another property right now, so I know this firsthand. They're very resource intensive. We want to make sure that we're focusing our efforts and resources on those properties that we think are really the most significant and have the highest likelihood of being designated through the appeal process as well. So in terms of, sorry, next slide. Yes. So in terms of next steps, staff are going to continue the discussions that we've been having with the property owner and their heritage consultant. We will also review the heritage evaluation report in detail that was submitted by the owner's heritage consultant. If staff uncovers some new compelling evidence that the property should in fact be designated, then we could bring another recommendation for designation forward at that point. Next slide. Sorry. So that concludes my presentation. And of course, staff are here to answer any questions that the committee may have at this point. I understand it can be quite a complex process and the act is very complicated. So we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Julia. Appreciate it. I moved the motion at council, and I was totally approving of the recommendation. So I had it explained to me through Kunal, and many times we had a lot of communications going, and so I moved the motion, and I was absolutely fine with that. So for us to get it on the floor here, Ryan, if I can just ask a question, can we move receipt of the presentation and the agenda item at the same time?
Through the chair, absolutely. I do see that Councillor Davidson would like to move the motion, and I do have a few other speakers. So,
okay, that's great. Thank you. So, yeah, I was going to ask Councillor Davidson to do so because 1, 2, 3, 4 Young, 5 Young is in her ward. So, thank you very much, Councillor Davidson. First round, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Julia. I do, forgive me, but you said unfortunately many times in that presentation, and what I was told by Kunar and what I was told by Heritage people and at the committee of the whole is that staff didn't actually have an opportunity to go on the property. They didn't actually get up close. It was quite a distance, that there was value in that you didn't have all the boxes checked off, and that you were in favor of getting more information or taking your time with this property. When you say unfortunately many times, it sounds like unfortunately the owner is arguing this. Unfortunately, we have to do it. When I wouldn't have voted for it if I didn't get the clear message from Heritage that you were supportive of getting more information here because staff hadn't even really been on the property. Am I wrong there?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Julia. I'll let you answer that, but I can say from my end that I definitely had the right answer to that question. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry. Thank you for the question through the chair. I think when I said unfortunately, I was more so referring to this new clause that was added to the act that had to do with when a notice of intention to designate is withdrawn by council, then the property actually has to come off the heritage register. So perhaps I was saying unfortunately about that because in my mind that is an unfortunate consequence of Bill 23 that we now automatically have to remove a property from the register, which means that it can't even be listed if council does decide to withdraw the notice of intention to designate. I'm trying to think where else I could have said unfortunately. Also,
well, that's okay. Through you, Sorry to interrupt. You said you unfortunately didn't come back to the committee. I just want this committee to know that Karen, I think I seconded it. You got 2 members of the committee on council, plus Scott Thompson, who is a defender of heritage. And we would never have moved this at all had it not been the recommendation from staff. So staff who recommended that this sort of be undone, and that's what we did. And I think so that landowners do have an opportunity to appeal if they believe they have more information. These people have offered to have their own heritage consultant. These aren't just folks saying no for the good of it. And I appreciate a council and a city that is willing to pivot if there's new information to be had. That's all I want to say. It was not a frivolous decision or in any way a rush, but I appreciate the position of the city staff, and I think we supported that at council. Those are my only comments. Thank you.
Yes.
That's correct, Councillor Davidson. Thank you very much. And that is exactly how it happened. So, Ryan, who's next on the speaking list?
Through the chair, committee member DeMambro would be next on the list.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you for letting me ask you this question. Julia, you brought up several times that through this process and the process of seeing what's happening in the province in terms of case law and why some objections are happening, you found out some information in this particular case, but would you be able to share with the committee, not necessarily today, but maybe down the road, some of the things that have changed that have brought to our attention of why we can designate or why a designation would be objected to, and what sort of that we can get a better handle on what's happening in those kind of cases? If you could speak to that, Julia, that would be fine. Thank you. That's all I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Bob. Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, so that is a very, very interesting question. I think maybe it does merit like a separate presentation or something like that. But basically, just to give a really kind of broad overview of what's going on, there have been a lot of appeals of properties similar to this one, where that it's kind of like a standalone old farmhouse located in a fairly rural surrounding, and these properties, unfortunately, are not really making the cut when it comes to appeals through the OLT. So yeah, I think it is, just that when we look at these properties and we say, this was part of a really important agricultural area in the late 1800s, and therefore, farmers lived here and they were important in their contribution to that community at the time. But I think the OLT is looking at it and saying like, well, if they're not like a super famous person, then that, doesn't really meet the criteria for significance, in terms of 906. So it's kind of little details like that it's kind of forcing us to reevaluate our approach and kind of appreciate how these things are actually unfolding when they get legally tested through the tribunal. If that helps answer your question, Barbara.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, thank you, Julia, through the chair.
Are those all your questions?
Yes, I'm finished.
That's it. Okay, Barb, thank you. Next on the speakers list for round one.
Through the chair would be committee member Cheng.
Thank you. Go ahead, Timothy.
Through the chair, and thank you to Julia for all the work on the recommendation of the properties. I guess the question is similar to the previous member. One is, does it result as a result of all this case law and all that, that would modify our standard of looking at the criteria, or that may change the level of the criteria requirement through the case law, or will it be encoded then and modify the actual criteria to be used? That's the first point. The second point would be if there are more, getting more and more of this type of objections would it be in our interest to maybe when we look at the recommendation to raise our bar on the assessment or the confidence level in our recommendation to maybe say from 80% to maybe 90% confidence level before the recommendations are made? Those are just my comments.
Okay, thank you. Julia, do you have any response?
Yes, through the chair. Okay, I'll try to. That was a two-part question. The first part was, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first part was whether the actual criteria, the evaluation criteria that the province has established are changing. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, no. So
yes.
it's not the actual criteria that are changing, it's just the interpretation of that criteria that is changing, right? And unfortunately, although the province has tried to be as objective as possible in creating these 9 criteria, applying these criteria is always going to be fairly nuanced and subjective kind of thing. So what we're learning through case law is that there is now becoming more and more arguments about exactly how we should be interpreting these criteria and how we should be applying them to buildings. In terms of the second part of your question, whether we need to raise our confidence levels, so unfortunately, it's not such a numeric thing when you're dealing with heritage value. It's not like, okay, I'm like 50% sure on this property versus I'm 80% sure on it. What we really do and what we're always guided by is the criteria, and the threshold that the province has set is that if it meets 2 of those criteria, then it can be designated. But of course, like when you're talking about meeting those criteria, it is a level of degrees, right? It's not a black and white thing. Heritage is not a black and white thing. So I think internally, our standards are getting more and more stringent in terms of what we think is meeting the criteria. And evaluation really is an iterative process, and we're learning along the way. But I think internally, yes, we are. It is definitely an iterative process for us and how we're approaching our evaluations.
Thank you, Julia. Timothy, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I know it's hard, not a scientific type of thing. I guess it's more an art, but science, I suppose. Thank you. It's pretty difficult to come a recommendation that would not be challenged in 100% of the case. Thank you.
Sorry,
it is, and
sorry, Chair.
you're right.
Chair Silovitz, if it's okay, could I please add to the answer a little bit further, if that's okay?
Oh, absolutely, Kunal. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair, just to add to what Julia was saying. So the reason we also presented this withdrawal, very similar to what Councillor Davids has said, is because the objection basically is about giving staff the ability to have a second sober thought about the property. So it's not about the level of confidence, whether it's 70, 80, or 90%. When we brought this forward to council, we had certain research information available to us. And based on that, we confidently brought forward the recommendation to designate this property to council. Now, through the objection process, what was offered to us was a further evaluation through an independent heritage consultant, and the promise to work with city staff as well, which they have actually met. They have actually addressed our concerns. They provided a very thorough evaluation report, as Julia mentioned in her presentation. And based on that, we decided to recommend that council withdraw the designation. But again, we are still able to, in the future, bring this back for designation if required, if we deem it necessary. So I just wanted to address that it's not about the level of confidence. It's all about the level of information available at any given time. I hope that helps sort of further elaborate.
Does that help, Timothy?
Yes, thank you.
Further?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ryan, any more on the speakers list for the first round?
Yeah, to the chair, committee member Hatt.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
And through the chair, again, thank you to Julia for a great presentation. Just a couple of points that I had. You had mentioned at the beginning that there were 9 items of criteria, and this particular property met 3 of them. Do we have any listing of those? Did I freeze
Through the
up?
chair, yes. Sorry, so that would have come forward. That would have come forward as part of the notice of intention to designate. So I believe that the initial evaluation was that it had design value as a representative example of like a late Victorian vernacular farmhouse building typology. It had some associative value for its associations with the Ryan Paxtons, who are kind of long-standing farmers on the site, and also contextual value for links to the surrounding landscape.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, through the chair. Do we have a copy of that list of the 9 points of criteria? I'm new to the committee, so I don't, I haven't
So-
received any of that yet, but
Through
I'd be curious
the
to read what.
chair. Yeah, through the chair. So this is, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't actually know that there was going to be a new member on the committee that I was presenting to. So I could have perhaps provided a bit more information on what's called regulation. It's called Ontario Regulation 906, 9/06. And so this is a provincial regulation under the Ontario Heritage Act. And it's through that regulation that establishes these 9 different criteria for, determining whether a property has cultural heritage value. I think that's certainly something that we can circulate to the group again, if that's helpful after today's committee meeting.
Thank you. That's a very good idea, Julie. I appreciate it. Anything further, Brian?
Through the chair as well, if you could also send me a copy of the Ontario Heritage Act. I haven't received a copy of that yet.
We can send you the links to that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Ryan, anyone else?
To the chair, yeah, Councillor Thompson has his hand up.
Thank you. We've gone through all committee members?
To the chair, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Thompson, again, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to chime in here. I do have to say, Julia, thank you so much for the presentation, and certainly going over how we got to where we are today. And I believe that, the decisions that council had to make were based on the information that was available at the time. And like you say, with Bill 23, we have certain time requirements that we have to meet in that respect. So I do believe that the right decision was made at that time, because I think, as you said, they've already indicated that they had a reputable planner on board. They also had a lawyer on board. And in all, because they've already indicated their opposition, this was something that would likely go to appeal if we had have proceeded and not withdrawn. And that could have been a costly scenario for us at the time. However, as you pointed out, we did ask the question as to whether, if new information showed up after the time crunch that we were sitting within, could we go for designation? And you did indicate that we could. And again, not knowing what could happen at an appeal, I think this was the better way to go, because as you indicated, even though there could be 3 criteria, it's what degree of, was the criteria met for those 3. So it would have been chancy if we had gone to an appeal process. So those are my comments. Thank you for allowing me to chime in.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Yes, I totally agree with everything you've said. Ryan, is there anyone else on the first round?
To the chair, no, that is it for the speakers list.
Okay. Does anyone wish to have a second round?
To the chair, I see no one wanting to have a second round.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so from my end, just to finish this up, everything that's been said here is 100% correct. As I said earlier, I would not have agreed to bring this forward to council if I wasn't absolutely sure that we were going in the right direction. And something that members of council also have to be aware of is that we have to make decisions that are in the best interests of the corporation and all residents. So if this meant that an OLT would be would have to be had, then it would be something that would be extremely difficult for our staff to defend. So I'm absolutely sure, and I did speak with the mayor as well, and he felt the same way. So just to put that into the record, I'm absolutely I absolutely approve of everything that we've done and said, and I know it was the right decision, and I thank council for their final decision as well. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor for the agenda item and to receive the presentation with thanks, moved by Councillor Davidson. All those in favor? My hand is risen.
To the chair, I see that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. So let's go back to that first agenda item now. Can you tell me what's happening with Agnes?
Thank you. To the chair, committee member Parr still has an issue with her audio, but I did receive her comments regarding 6.1, and she has stated she would like to say that she's happy to see that this property is coming forward for designation.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you, Agnes. Okay. So that's terrific. So if we could, does anybody else wish to comment on this matter, the first agenda item, now that we're back to it?
To the chair, I'm seeing no one that wishes to speak. Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Okay,
committee member Pat just raised his hand.
Okay. Hey, thank you. Brian, go ahead.
Just through you, through the chair, on this particular item, again, how many of the 9 points of designation are listed for this?
So I can take that question really quickly. So, sorry, through the
So
chair.
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, as noted in the report, that's where we usually note the criteria that have been met. I believe that 4 criteria have been met. 4 of the 9 criteria have been met.
Brian?
All good with me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I believe we've brought this to a close. I have no comments. I'm in favor of the staff recommendations. So this agenda item on the floor, moved by committee member Agnes Parr. All those in favor, my hand is risen.
To the chair, I see that carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Ryan, is adjournment on the next item?
To the chair, that's correct. Adjournment is the next item.
Okay. Thank you. So just before we get to adjournment, Ryan, can you confirm the date of our next meeting, please?
Thank you. To the chair, the next meeting of HRH is scheduled for Thursday, April the 3rd at 3 p.m.
Excellent. Thank you. And to our newest member, I'm so sorry I'm not there to see you visibly, but I want to thank you for putting your name forward, and congratulations on being selected by council. And I look forward to working with you, and I'm sure the rest of our committee sends the same wishes to you. Thank you very much for joining our committee. Okay, so so we're going to move to the next agenda item, which is adjournment. Can I have a member of committee move that, please?
To the chair, I see committee member DeMambro has moved motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair DeMambro. So moved. All those in favor for adjournment? My hand is risen.
To the chair, I see that carries unanimously.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm sorry this was a bit difficult, but we got through it. My thanks to our deputy clerk for all his assistance here. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good March break, and we'll see you.